Let's get it kicking off. So it's 6:33 on Monday, small May 4th, 2020. Welcome everybody to the local business committee meeting of Community Board 8. My name is Michael Malamphy. I am the chair of the committee. Tonight's meeting, I've reached out to a number of local business people from our neighbourhood to give us their give us their experience of what the shutdown has been for them. We're going into 7 weeks now since March 12th when things started closing down. Small business, local business has been in the news nationally, obviously, the last couple of weeks, with the push in many states outside of New York to get back to work as quick as possible and what that all entails. I think one big concern many of us have is how we approach reopening and when it is safe to do so. That's going to be an interesting situation for a lot of people. I know some businesses have been doing their best to remain open over the past few weeks, and it's been a struggle for many on many different fronts, on many different levels. And I also know a number of businesses that have opened up recently over the past 2 weeks, as the initial closures and the initial orders took hold. Some people have been able to reopen their businesses, and they've brought an awful lot of challenges, especially with the really good weather that we're experiencing the last couple of days. So without further ado, I think the first thing would be, I'd like to ask anybody who's joining us, and you'll have to bear with me because I'm working on an iPhone right now at the moment, as I don't have access to my computer. So I'm working off an iPhone. So I suppose the very first thing that I'd like would be for anybody who owns a small business, a local business that has logged on, that is part of the meeting, who's watching and listening right now, if you could virtually raise your hands from your device or from your laptop or your computer or however you're tuning in with us.
And Mick, I'll jump in and give a little quick briefing on Zoom. Great. For anybody who hasn't used it before. Raising your hand just visually is not the best. It's great. I do love watching everyone dance in their little videos. But to raise your hand so that Mick can see you, you have to go to the participants button, which is at the bottom of your screen. It says participants, looks like two little figures next to each other and has a number next to it. Right now, that number is 21. You can click on that, it'll open up a window. And if you're looking at the bottom of that window, in the left-hand corner, there should be a raise hand button or an icon that just looks like a hand. So you click on that and you will appear at the top of the participants list where Mick can see you. I see John and Ryan have both raised their hand through that menu. So you can, Mick, I'll hand it back over to you. And if you're on the phone, to raise your hand, it's *9. And right now, everybody is muted. You cannot unmute yourself. Mick will call on you, and I'll unmute you whenever he calls.
Okay, so we'll just go as democratically as possible. So who's top of the list right there with their hands raised right now? Will, is it?
It's John. I'm gonna unmute him and lower his hand.
Great, so.
How's everyone doing over there?
Hiya, John. Thanks for joining us tonight, buddy.
Sure. Now, specifically, what would you like me to speak on? Because there's really so many ways to approach this topic.
Yeah.
What is going to be most useful for the Small Business Council and the Community Board of Art?
I think we heard from you last month about the situation that you had, and I know that you had closed down on the Thursday, right after our first meeting last month. Have you reopened since then, or I see that you're in your uniform, so.
Yeah, so we closed down. We lost our chef. He was here for 40 years. He died from COVID. I had the virus for 15 days. My mother-in-law, my son, my sous chef also got it. We closed, not as a result of that, but as things started to reach its height, we felt it to be most prudent and responsible to do what I call a hard reset of the business. for both the safety of the community and the safety of the staff. Now, on this block alone, I know 15 people who passed away as a result of COVID. All of that being said, we reopened with amended hours, and we did amend hours prior. We're 9 to 9 now, all takeout and delivery. We sanitize the sidewalks 3 times a day. We sanitize the interior of the store. We are adhering to all of the mandates as set forth by Governor Cuomo, and we've added to that as well. An example is we have full face coverings on the cashiers. Nobody's allowed into more than 5 feet of the entrance of the store, and the like. Bottom line is, in my experiences, the numbers are not there. When they allow customers back in, the numbers, I believe, are not going to be there either. Now, why that is, I don't know. Switching gears quickly to some of the challenges, there's nothing that is a challenge that I don't think any business can get over, but it's going to require more money from them and more effort. An example for us is we shuttle our staff back and forth every day. We use a single 10-hour shift to cover the spread of the day. And we work with a very small core group of employees as to have the best control over what we're bringing into the neighborhood and into the store by way of financially, we're making enough to get to the next day, but not much more. And yeah, it is a different world. I don't think we're going to be returning to the same marketplace that we left. My humble opinion, but what I see right now is a very lackluster stream of business. The customers that do come in are in high spirits. We've all become somewhat accustomed to this way of life, but I don't see it ending anytime soon.
I'm so sorry, John, to hear that you personally have been touched in such a way like this. And please send all our love and our condolences to the family of your friend, your colleague that worked with you for so long, and we wish you all, like all of your staff and your community, like all the best throughout this. I appreciate what you have to say here, especially as somebody who is working through this disaster, in terms of what the business actually looks like right now. What's your opinion on? Do you have any opinion on like the idea of reopening, or not reopening, but the idea that somehow we can get back to some sort of business in the coming weeks and months, and
So
also with your experience with the disease of COVID-19 itself? I mean, obviously you must have some opinions there as well.
Okay, so look, I mean, part of my job as being a restaurant owner and a long-term restaurant owner is looking at the next step with regard to my industry and my business. Even before COVID, there's been such rapid change to the way that retail, no matter what they're retailing, conduct their business. I mean, we live in a remote world. Information and change happens quickly, and it oftentimes happens without us even knowing. I think the food business in particular, with the onset of deliveries and takeout, we're definitely going to see a big shift in that direction. Now, one of the things that McDonald's is working on right now is a concept store where there's no human interaction whatsoever. I believe that this serves the kind of general thrust of moving into a more virtual marketplace. My wife was laid off. She's in the real estate game. I don't think they're ever going to invite, 100 people to come back to an office to work when they see that working remotely is somewhat, if not more, effective. The restaurant business, I think, is going to be irrevocably changed. I think the rents are way too high. I think that there is way too much of a demand for labor now. And I think that any business that's going to make it through a tough time like this is going to need to entertain the fact of re-engineering or readapting their business to something that's more suitable to the needs of the local community and the larger community at large. I think that that COVID is a wake-up call. I don't think it's the last we're going to see of something like this. I am not a hysterical person. I tend to take things in stride, and I like to consider myself pretty rational. But change is here. Now, with regard to the experience of COVID, It took me out for about 15 days. I didn't leave my house during that time. And the biggest effect it had on me physically was very, very bad headaches. Thank God I didn't suffer from any respiratory illness, and I've since been for an antibody test. I should be getting the results of those later in the week.
So, I mean, I suppose one recommendation then that you would generally make is that if people are returning to work, then testing is something that's important.
100%. I mean, if you listen to the science on this, and I kind of drilled down into it, is this notion of herd immunity is essential. The vaccination allows us to get to those maximum levels of herd immunity quicker. As an example, if you have 10 people, 2 people naturally get the disease, 2 people never come in contact with it, and then let's say you have 2 people who now have an antibody, the possibility of it transmuting is going to be stunted. And I think that's what the science, the doctors, and the politicians are really kind of aiming at here. I think as private citizens, our responsibility is to keep those safe around us by not passing the disease while we develop this herd immunity. Once the vaccination comes on and testing becomes 100%, which I believe we're at now, we will have a very good shot of coming back to some semblance of normalcy without experiencing a tremendous second wave.
John, we really, really appreciate you taking time out. I know that you're busy. You're a busy guy there.
Never too busy for the community board. Never too busy.
Appreciate it, man. But again, condolences to your colleague and his family, and thank you for your input. It's really, really, it's really important.
I remember being. Messa taught me how to make my first fried egg when I was 3 years old in this store. I remember.
You're after freezing on us there, John. Can you hear us? What are you saying?
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry. I just missed there what you had to say about your colleague. What did you say? He taught you how to fry your first egg when you were 3?
Yes, he's been here since he was around 40 years old. He was close to 80 when he passed. He's been part of the mansion as long as we've been here. As a matter of fact, the matzo ball soup recipe that we're so famous for is his recipe.
Wow. Well, thanks very much for being with us tonight, man. I really appreciate it. All right.
Of course.
I'm going to return to Will for now. And Will, do you have who's next on the list there with their hand raised?
The next person up is Ryan O'Neill.
Ryan O'Neill.
I'm going to mute him now.
Very good. Thank you. Hi, Ryan. How's it going, man?
Not too bad. What's the story? How are you?
I'm good. Thanks very much for joining us here tonight. Ryan, if my memory, because it's been so long, serves me correct, you're the owner and operator. You take care of all the business over at Iggy's on 2nd Avenue, correct?
Try my best anyway, yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much. So, again, just a lot of what we're trying to just ascertain here with this meeting is, I mean, I think a lot of people know what it's been like for some people who had the experience of having to close down. I know you guys took it upon yourselves very early on, even prior to, I think, when it was mandated to actually close in the best interests of people's health and safety. And again, tonight, what we're really looking for is any thoughts and opinions about moving forward. If you've had any ideas about what it's going to take for you guys to open up again. So if you want to just maybe start with a little bit of your experience of the closing, and then, any opinions or ideas you have about reopening.
Yeah, no, but first of all, John, if you're there, I want to say it's very sorry to hear about your colleagues and stuff. My condolences to all the family and everything. Listen, we're in a world now that seems make believe. You know what I mean? We closed, a couple of days before, and we were made to. It actually came across me. Actually, I'm good friends with the guys that own San Matteo, who are obviously Italian, and he was telling me for about 2 or 3 weeks before it really came here about this coronavirus being, this is something you can't be messing with. And he's obviously talking to people back home. I'm not going to put my hands up and say, we'll be okay at the time when it comes, we'll deal with it. And I'm not going to try and say I thought it was because until it came, until you realize the full extent of how deadly this Casper of a ghost was. I am a little bit more optimistic. I think that it's going to be a long road ahead, especially I think about my own bar. Where our bar's kind of claustrophobic. It's very narrow, very tight. We do average okay business during the week, and then Friday, Saturday we're crazy with the back room packed and stuff. So I think we will definitely feel it. But I think humans like humans, you know. And I know we talk about the world outside of the bars in terms of offices not being used and people working from home, and feeling like I do. I think that'll come into place a little bit. But you know, people like it. People like humans. New York City's loved bars for all its life. From my own, you know, it's been a beast for all its life. It's getting better, but I do think it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time. And I think as long as we respect the COVID, and if it becomes any case of underestimation of it, I think that's when we're in trouble, you know. And I think we're going to be our biggest victims if we do that. But I think we respect it as a community, respect it as humanity, and treat it with the right caution ahead. I think step by step, we'll get to where we were. Putting a time frame on that is impossible. You know, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 18 months, you know. But I think if you treat it with respect and, you know, with the closer, every day we're getting closer to a vaccine, etc., etc. I do believe that we'll get to a point now that the black cloud that's going to be hanging above us for the next foreseeable future will start to evaporate and go away, and we'll get back to where we were before this all happened.
I really appreciate that. And just so everybody knows, I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm actually just writing down a lot of notes as well, because I'm just listening to what you're saying. So it's really important that I write this down too, so I can kind of make sense of it for myself. One thing you touched on there, which is in New York, which is very much a New York City. It's very much a New York City trend when it comes to a lot of our businesses, especially the restaurant trade, and of course an awful lot of local mom and pop stores, is space. Space is a premium in New York City. Rents are extremely expensive, as we all know, for a lot of people. Do you think, I suppose I'll ask you, because I know your premises, do you think that sort of an issue is going to pose a problem for a lot of people having to reopen? And is that going to give New York City a different challenge to say what the rest of the country might be facing in terms of just basic square footage of our businesses?
I think there's definitely an element of that to be honest, you know, like kind of the first question people ask me myself, they're like, oh, well, are you going to be able to pay your rent? Are you going to be able to pay that? You know, and I think that's the biggest red light that we all face. We're lucky to have a great relationship. We've been there for 25 years nearly, you know, we have a great relationship. And I think that, you know, it's not a matter of are the bars or the businesses going to be able to do it. This has to be a team effort top to bottom. You know what I mean? And if some person's not going to pull their weight and be part of the team in terms of your landlord's not going to work with you and you work with your staff and you all do your bit, like I said, step by step, then it's going to fall down at some point. Everybody has to put in their 50 cents here. And I think I would like to think that there will be a bit of reason between everybody that we would be able to work with each other and get through this. Nobody wanted this. This doesn't benefit anybody really.
Right.
So I do believe there might be, I believe that it might cause issues certain issues, but I think that for the majority, things will be able to work out that we both will be able to get through this.
Okay, I really appreciate it, man. Thanks very much for your opinion and for your insight. All right, and just make sure if you can let like your staff and your colleagues know like that we're all thinking of them, because we know people are out of work right now and it's tough. And we're just really trying to kind of get your ideas really, you know, and hopefully try to have you guys involved in any conversations when we do start talking about reopening again. Thanks very much, Ryan.
Not a problem. Thanks very much, and all the best, everybody out there.
Cheers, man. Thank you. I'm going to let me just pull up the participants right here, and I'm going to go to Will, because Will is the man who is running the show here. So Will, who can you see that has their hand up that is a local business owner that would like to share their information next?
The two people we have who've raised their hands as small business owners to speak are Jimmy Jazz and then Samantha Meyer. So I'm going to unmute Jimmy.
Great.
I thank you for
Jimmy.
Hi, Nick. It's been a while. Jimmy Jazz. I didn't realize until you said it that I put Jimmy Jazz up there. That's a nickname, obviously. From Ryan's daughter. I've been at Ryan's daughter since 1999. John, a special shout out to you, sir. I've been watching you on the Instagram. You guys look great the other day out there with New York going. And my heart goes out to you and your family. I, like Ryan, Cheers to you too. Closed Sunday, March 15th. Sunday morning, after agonizing it for about a week and a half, agonizing over what I saw as two roads of logic, and never shall they meet. One of them was saying, lower your capacities, as if 35 people versus 70 people in a tight bar like ours, the virus would care. And then the other was the other logic was from our health professionals. And I said, they took so long to cancel the Patty's Day parade. I didn't know what to order in. So anyway, I feel like now I'm thrust back to that morning on Sunday, March 15th, as the news fills up with discussions about whether we're going to reopen. I first need to ask, has anything changed since that Sunday morning in New York City that would lead us to believe that reopening is a responsible or appropriate decision for my type of business? The bar industry is a tough one, and the community board knows this well. Even the best of us can be caught looking foolish and irresponsible, not just in what we do, but when we do it best, when we make our most money. Our packed Fridays are packed Saturdays, right? That's not the way we want it as bar owners. And I'd like to send everyone to that article about Prune in the New York Times. If you hadn't had a chance, just look up Prune Restaurant, Lower East Side, 20 years, New York Times. One woman's story about building a restaurant. She has a lot of great things to say, not about COVID, but about this industry and how difficult it is on a daily basis. And John, you almost started talking about this stuff. The business itself has changed so much. It's so saturated in New York. The rents are so high. 20 years ago, you didn't have a craft restaurant around every corner. When she opened up in Prune in 20 years ago, it was still pizza shops and some Polish shops and stuff, but you didn't have $35 entrees and craft cocktails. So for any businessman in this business who's paid attention, yeah, the economics of it will have to change. We could, John, you said it great. I don't see anything that these guys can't overcome. But for what purpose? When this is a health crisis, I want to listen to the health authorities. We want to talk business and how to make business. I could make a killing right now. I could be like the bootleggers, and I could flout every law and guidance coming from the top, coming from anywhere. But I'm not going to do that. That's not what the business I open. I kind of like the idea of taking the silver lining from this and finding how we can come back stronger with a different mental outlook about how this business, because we really don't like as bar owners, believe it or not, to push people out onto the street at 4 a.m, all drunk as shit. Excuse my language. We don't, that's not our goal. Our goal is so you guys, the community can come together and have a good time in the bar and see each other face to face. But if you see the guidelines from our health professionals, how on earth do we do that? And how are we even talking about it at this stage? Mm-hmm. We should be talking about how we take care of our people when the safety nets aren't there in this system. When this system finally shows how weak it really is, because it's built upon these false expectations, this demand to monetize in ways that are ludicrous, leaving so many people out. The margins in the bar business and the restaurant business have become so small, especially in New York City, but yet we continue to do it. Why do we continue to do it? Because we want to provide a good, safe, fun-loving environment to lash down a few pints or to have a great meal together. We need to focus on the human needs right now. I would gladly FaceTime any of you guys and talk about how we make changes to our restaurant or to bring customers in. I don't think that'll be the problem. A lot of people will come in anyway. They'll wear their masks sideways. They'll drink their pints. They'll go out and they'll smoke cigarettes. in a business like mine, where we try to inebriate people over time period, those people make poor decisions. And we could spend thousands of dollars recreating our restaurants so that people are 6 feet apart. But at the end of the day, like the gentleman before me said, it's got to be a team effort on everybody. And if we start talking about when are we going back and how are we going to go back, we let the landlords off the hook. If the governor says go back to work, that's really get your people off unemployment. That's what it's saying. So I'm sorry, I'm pretty heated. It means a lot to me. I want to go back so bad. I want to go back to a pre-COVID world so bad. You guys do remember this happened right before St. Patrick's Day. Is that some kind of joke? I wait all year to make that money. I wait all year to make that. But anyway, I'll let it go now. I have too much to say about it, but I hope I got across a couple of things. I will decide when we reopen because we're not getting good guidance from the top when it comes to restaurants and bars and how they reopen. I will decide because nobody is talking about having lines down 85th Street now because we have to lower capacity. No one is talking about the problem of lowered capacity means lowered income. And if I'm not making any money, why am I bringing my employees into an environment that is unsafe? Let's see what we've done against COVID, against the virus, and take the opportunity to rebuild our society. And then we can go back to making some money and having some fun. That's it. I'll leave you. I'm sorry.
I really appreciate, Jim. No, I really appreciate it. And I know this is I know that these kind of conversations.
These meetings right now, I get emotional.
They hit an emotion. Listen, they hit an emotional level for so many people because it's completely understandable. This is our livelihood, you know, and we all we work in this business, and it is very much about interacting with people on a face-to-face level. But I really appreciate your thoughts there, man, and also just yourself and Ryan and John who've already spoken, and I know anyone else who's coming up. Feel free to email me as well. I'm going to take a break for 2 minutes so people can observe the one of the highlights. Not it's a horrible time, but one of the positive elements of this, where we give thanks to our healthcare workers as well as all our essential workers who are out there.
And I'm going to mute
take a
everyone
moment
so that
to
we
go
can
off
all
the
hear
clock.
everybody.
No, the court said a picture. I'm on a meeting right now.
Oh, there's Matt. Yeah,
You guys, if you
I don't know who that lady is.
Everyone
You
is unmuted,
recognize
so
her?
you can all be heard if
she's
you're
gone.
walking or talking.
Oh, that's the girl, that's the public member. I forget what business she's in. Yeah. Yeah. I forget her name.
All right, it's 7:02. I'm going to mute everybody again. We're going to find Mick. I'm going to find Mick and we'll get back on track.
Yeah.
Mick.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks very much, man. I am going to. So you have Samantha. You said who's got their hand raised.
Correct.
Great. So let's have Samantha.
Samantha, you're unmuted.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Samantha.
You may remember I co-own a business called Let's Dress Up. It's a princess-themed kids space, actually right by Ryan's daughter. So hello. Same thing. We closed on the 15th. We actually had a session that day that was like an open session. Half of the birthday parties canceled that weekend, half went on, and we had one that was run by us, and I like agonized over what we should do about it. About half the people showed up, and we were kind of waiting on the public school announcement as kind of a benchmark for what people were thinking as far as kids are concerned. So of course we had that session in the afternoon, and then Sunday night at 6 o'clock, they closed the public schools. So we lost the camps that week. I also have a child at home, so I'm homeschooling also, which is challenging at best. So I think, I mean, I've been kind of glued to Cuomo and kind of any information I can find. We definitely want to reopen. We realize it's not going to look like it did before. Our space is really small, which is not great, but also kind of is great, because normally if it was a session run by us, like a play session, it would be 12 kids. And maybe parents would stay if their kids wanted them to, or maybe parents would leave. So we're trying to think about, okay, can we sit them farther apart at the tea party? Can we say, parents, you must drop off, because then it's less people in the space and less adults in the space, and then the kids can kind of, have their fun. It's really challenging to kind of know. I think it's too soon, but even just someone like me who wants to make a list and wants to know what I'm going to do so that I'm ready. Like the CDC recommendations has kids, businesses, schools, and all of that stuff in phase 1. Cuomo has it in phase 4. So that's like not even close. I mean, that's like miles apart. It's not even like 2 or 3 plus or minus. It's like, I mean, it's just not the same thing. And as I said, as a parent, I think these poor kids are like, my daughter's 5. She's like a basket case. She misses her friends. She can't understand what's happening. She thinks she understands it, but she doesn't really. I've told her like 4 times that she's not going back to school, and she says, yeah, Mom, I know. And then a day later, she's like, so when am I going back to school? And you're like, oh my God, we just talked about this. So I do view coming back sooner as, I mean, we're not going to make enough money by, when we first open and maybe there's 6 kids at a session and there's no birthday parties. Believe me, we're not going to be in it for the money, but there is a part of me that wants to get it right and wants to be on the front end, because as a parent, I'm like, give me somewhere safe that isn't a huge gym with 1,000 surfaces and 1,000 people working. We have myself and Judy, the owners. We have 1 W-2 employee, and then we have like 3 other people that come when there's something going on. We're not open all the time. We're only open if we have something going on. So there is a part of me that thinks like, we can be a resource. We can help the community by giving parents a safe place, if we get it right, to send their kid for 90 minutes or 2 hours, to let these kids be around other kids, to let them have some fun and not be staring at a screen where they're getting this ridiculous homeschool stuff. So it's, on the one hand, I want guidance, but maybe it's better if it's just up to me. I don't know. I feel like I'm not going to get the granular level. Like I think restaurants and bars they have enough of a presence. There are enough of them. There's voices that will be heard. I feel like a little bit lost in the shuffle, which could be fine. Maybe that's better. I don't know. But we're just thinking about all of that stuff all the time and don't really have an answer. And again, I think someone said before, like, I think it will come back. I think that little kids will want to dress as princesses, but I think it's going to take longer. The summer is slow for us anyway. Who knows if there's going to be camp or not camp. So I think there's still so many factors and not a lot of, forget answers, but there's not a lot of direction that's kind of at the really in the weeds kind of granular level that would be nice. So yeah. I'm just soaking in what everyone else has to say, try and get some wisdom and some insight and take it day by day.
It's frustrating, I'm sure. Like one thing I hear you saying is the lack of answers and the lack of kind of direction it's not helpful. I mean, obviously that's not helpful, but that's a huge frustration, I'm sure. Like I said to Ryan a minute ago, I know your space. How on average if you have this number, on average, how big are normally are your parties, like with the kids?
So a
You
birthday
mentioned-
party, the biggest that I mean, we've done more, but the biggest that I'm kind of comfortable doing is 20 kids.
20 would be like the optimum. Like,
Yeah,
that's
because
enough.
also you have to remember at birthday parties, a lot of parents want to stay and hang out with their parent friends. So it gets crowded with adults as well.
And so in terms of moving forward, if in a perfect world this disease was to disappear, or if in a perfect world we were all just able to go back to work and still keep social distancing because the disease obviously isn't going to disappear, like you wouldn't be able to have parties of 20. I mean, with social
No.
distancing in effect. No.
No.
Okay, so that's also that's just another thing I think is important to bring up when it comes to reopening businesses, is that we have these, mass gatherings of more than 2 people and stuff like that. We have these rules in effect for a reason. And again, a lot of our business owners are working with like smaller, more confined spaces than we find elsewhere in the country.
Right.
I really appreciate it, Samantha. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
your info. I really appreciate it, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks.
And especially with your 5-year-old at home as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure
Thank you.
it's not been lost on me the last couple of weeks that I just can't imagine what it must be like for parents dealing with anything like this. So we appreciate all that work too. Will, just wondering, do we
Yes.
have anybody else with a hand raised that would like
Sure.
to speak from the point of view of being a business owner?
John has his hand back up, so I'm gonna unmute him if
Just
that's
before
all
we
right.
before we go to John, I would just like, if there are business owners still in the meeting, if I would like just to know, because I know that there are lots of programs and stuff out there, and the big one everyone's been speaking about for different reasons the last couple of weeks is these PPP loans. It was something we spoke about last month, but if the business owners who are in the room, if you applied for a PPP loan, could you also maybe raise your hand just so we know that you applied? And we may come around to you once we speak to John again, just to see if you were successful or if you heard anything at all, because that's something I think that people need to understand also with all this. So let's go to John.
Hey, John.
Hey, how you doing again, guys? So I'll start backwards. So the PPP, the first round, I couldn't get it. They, I guess, re-upped the funding for it because, as we all heard, the large corporations ended up absorbing all of the PPP funds before it was even made available to us. However, I was able to get my application in through Santander Bank, and I'll be receiving the PPP, so that's helpful. I also received the grant as well. I think it maxes out at 10K. Keep in mind, the one thing that seems to be going right is the viewpoint for where funding should go. In my humble opinion, typically we miss the mark on that as politically we miss the mark on that. But this is designed for us, for small businesses who have an intention on sticking around. This is not meant for, multinational corporations or guys who are bringing in billions of dollars. That being said, I would highly recommend you speak to your banks. They are all prepared to provide you with information and submit your applications. I would not, however, hire someone for additional funds to do that. It's not that complicated. The only thing you basically need are your 941s and your payroll documents. Moving on to the other thing. So look, I'm a parent too. I have 2 kids, both of them out of school. I actually homeschool my eldest, Max, in the store every day. 5 hours a day it takes me to school this kid, which is kind of indicative of where I'm going with this. When it comes to business, it's going to be a matter of staying ahead of the curve and realizing that the world that we live in the past 15 years is not the same world that it used to be. Information moves quicker, change happens quicker, and it's a matter of really keeping your finger on the pulse of that and trying to stay just one step ahead. So in the event of having a business which relies on children and group gatherings, the question you're going to have to ask yourself is how can you best engage those kids while keeping your business afloat? The one thing that I've seen is customers are acutely aware of the struggle to whatever degree we're going through it, to keep us going. My tip percentage is higher for my staff. Customers are not as concerned with pricing, which is to say they want to support you. Those customers who love your business, who love you, are extremely supportive. And this is, I could say wholeheartedly, this neighborhood, what makes it so special then and now is a genuine concern, no matter how transient it's become. The changing business, or the way business is probably going to look going into the future, are going to exist within a margin of small adjustments to huge. An example is we for years have been using a self-sealing salad container. After surveying a lot of my customers, this has become a great concern, self-sealing containers. We've moved largely to self-sealing containers now, and we're going to double down on that as time goes on. It seems like something that's a detail, but it is something that the customers notice and will gravitate toward. Another friend of mine who has a very high-end steakhouse, he's decided to create a very limited menu, which is going to be used for takeout and delivery only. So whereas he would normally sell a $200 steak, he's now selling a $20 cheeseburger, $15 cheeseburger. Is he making the money he was making before? No. But when things go back to quote unquote normal, and now he has an additional facility, he is going to be better armed, better equipped to deal with the marketplace that's facing us down the pipe. I hope that's helpful. I know it's non-specific, but I'm still myself sitting here and thinking, how can I adapt this 75-year-old business to meet the needs of a community or a city that is rolling through or off of a pandemic? I mean, nobody expected a pandemic then. Even I was sitting with Philip and I was discussing with him. I mean, I'm still in shock. I mean, like, who would have ever thought? This is the stuff that science fiction's made out. And so, you know, as usual, those businesses who can adapt will survive. Those who refuse are going to have an awfully hard go of it.
Appreciate it, man. Especially that talking about just being innovative. I think innovation and creativity is going to be key for a lot of our businesses. That
it's not easy. It's not easy.
It's not easy at all. I just want to clear up one thing. You did say that in the second round of the PPP loans that you were successful with your application. Did you also say that you applied for the grant, the EIDL? Was that the EIDL grant?
Yes.
Okay, and so that's been a success for you. Okay, that's good to know.
Well, we haven't received anything yet. So the applications have been accepted. They said, yes, we'll be receiving the funding. Now, just like unemployment, as I mentioned, my wife was laid off. We put in for unemployment, I think 3 weeks ago, and they're still processing. So I have no idea what that processing time looks like. You know, they said that everything is, you know, green lighted, but I don't know. I still haven't gotten to the end of that road yet.
Yeah, unemployment, unfortunately, it does take a couple of weeks, especially at the moment.
Yeah,
and you don't get much in the way of information about your application until.
And we've never filed for it. I mean, which is, you know, kind of, I guess, bears mentioning. I mean, there's a lot of people who probably never applied, who have never been in a position to apply for unemployment, who are now forced into that position.
Yeah. Okay, I really appreciate it, John. Thanks, and thanks for your candor as well, man. I appreciate it. Back to Will. Just Will, I'd like to ask if we have any other business owners there. Just on that question of the PPP loan, if people had their hands raised, and again, I don't really want to know people's business, but I do want to just. I think it's important that we start to, because up until this weekend, I hadn't heard of any business at all in New York that had received any of these grants, as they call them, which are forgiven once you spend a certain percentage of them on payroll, because it's a payroll protection program. But over the weekend, I did hear of a couple of businesses, which is good to know. It's good to know that there's finally some sort of funding coming through for local businesses. But I'd like to know if the other business owners who were on the meeting actually were successful or have heard anything about their applications if they made them.
So the two business owners who we heard from earlier, Samantha and from Ryan's daughter. Samantha is the first one up, so I'm going to mute her.
Yeah, great.
Hi.
Hi, Samantha. And again, we don't want to be prying into any business, but I do know that there are programs and stuff out there, and I just wanted to see if you had anything to say about that.
Happy to share. So for the EIDL, we got $3,000 for the grant. Have not had any communication about the loan behind it, but we'll take it. The PPP, we applied with Chase, which is where we have our banking relationship, although, you know, we don't have a line of credit with them already. I'm sure we're a very small time for them. So it is lost in the phase two, you're in phase two kind of eternal waiting list. We definitely did not get it in round one. We got an email to that effect. Round two, I think they were sending people who were in phase three to the SBA, and we were not there yet. So we're in a holding pattern. I will say that I have heard through some other small business groups that I'm in that people are having more success with the kind of fintech or firms outside of your B of A's and your places of the world. So I just applied through one of those yesterday just to see, because apparently you can apply with many as long as you can only accept with whoever gets back to you.
Could you just repeat that? I'm so sorry. Pardon me. Could you just repeat that? You
So
applied
I
with
applied with a different one outside of Chase because
different bank. Okay.
people had success with kind of not the big bank type of model. And this application, it was from Cabbage, which is based in Atlanta, and it's all online. Who knows if I just, you know, they're on the SBA website, so it's legit, but who knows what will happen. But I did hear that kind of going away from people have not had a good experience with Chase unless you are kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And, you know, our business is probably not a great example because we're not super labor intensive. So most of our people are 1099s that come in and work actual events. So we may not be the best example, but we are the small business that is trying to help. So we want to be in there in some capacity, but still waiting.
Okay. The last time we spoke about a month ago, when these loans first came out in the first round, the number of banks were limited. They were very limited. So from what I'm gathering from what you just said, there are more lenders out there now who have got their hands in the pie, I suppose.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so there's more lenders. So that's a step in the right direction. So that's a good thing.
Supposedly they, and I don't know if they earmarked a particular amount of funds, but from what I've read, they do want a portion of the second round to be going to these more community banks and smaller lenders, not just the big guys, obviously, because they got some bad press with who they gave it to last time.
Yeah, that's right. More community lenders. Yeah, that wasn't fun news. I think Jim had his hand up as well on this question. If we can go to Jim, if he's still with us. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it together this time. The PPP loan, you know, they tried to push that through as quickly as they could because it was one of the things that existed already. It made sense for Congress to look at this and say, and they tried to make it really easy to apply for it. And of course, you know, everyone rushed, and just like unemployment, the backlogs, you know, the system breaks down, and then the freakouts happen. But the PPP loan, that we all know what happened. I'll assume everyone read the news. You know, I won't. I got mine in the second run through Chase. I had some issues with Chase, as were just mentioned, because I don't have a banker. You know, I go to a bank and I make my deposits and I write my checks and they take their fees, but I don't have a relationship with a bank. So when I heard that, you know, I'm like, uh-oh, you know, so I called a local branch and was lucky enough to find someone there who was stepped out of their job to help me along, but made it very clear that, you know, this money was going to go fast, you know. And so that first round, the trouble that remains though, besides all that we know, that we heard in the news, and the difficulty of getting this money, whether it's there or not, is the terms to which you are tied. 75% must be used for payroll payments that occur in this 8-week period from when you are given the money till the end. So, you know, we're not allowed to open. So obviously that time's going to change, maybe. You also must rehire the same amount of people that you had on payroll. They don't have to be the same person in body by June 30th. And any pressure that's been given to Congress to change these terms or anything now is is not being listened to. So be very careful when you do get these loans. Don't put yourself into a debt 2 or 3 years down the road. I just caution you. Be very careful. This money is given with terms, and it will be forgivable. But myself, I only, so they find that by getting your monthly payroll, you can borrow up to 250% based upon your monthly payroll. Whatever you get, you can use 75% to pay payroll during those periods. And the other 25% can be used for some types of utilities, rent, and whatnot. But given the high rents, most people will find that their payroll, those numbers do not compute. 25% of that isn't going to get you very far with your landlord. If your landlord does decide to play hardball, that's going to be tough. The SBA loan is not going to save your ship. It's designed to keep people on payroll, and
off unemployment. Yeah.
But anyway, that's my experience with the PPP.
That's great. I really appreciate your insight and your input, mate. Thank you. I'm going to go back to Will for a moment, and I'm going to take a look just to see. We have.
So we have Billy and Kaza both raised their hand from the board, but I don't know if you want to go to board members now or if you want to.
I think I as far as I know we had a few other people, business owners who I reached out to, and I know that some of them are actually quite busy at the moment with all of what's going on. So I completely empathize and sympathize that they can't make it. So I appreciate the people who have taken time out of their busy work schedules right now to share, and I thank you so much, and then wish you all safety and good health over the coming days and weeks, and hopefully we'll be seeing you all sooner rather than later back at work. So now I suppose let's open it up to board members. I would like to.
Matt Bauer.
Matt's here.
Yeah, and he's raised his hand. Would you like to call on him and then go to board members?
So long as Cos doesn't mind, then absolutely. I'll go to Matt first, because I always appreciate hearing what Matt has to say from the Madison Avenue page, and then we'll go to the board members.
Cos, that was totally a mixed idea. It was not mine. Matt, you're unmuted.
No, thanks. Just a quick thing. I just want to let you know what I've been hearing from the retailers, more clothing stores and jewelry stores, not restaurants in Madison, but the clothing and jewelry stores. Because they've been meeting on a regular basis. A lot of the stores are taking advantage, especially of the more independent stores that are on the avenue, are taking advantage of that policy that one person could be in the store at a time to fulfill orders. That's something that was, I guess, released about 2 weeks ago, that the governor gave a recommendation on that, or advice on that, I guess what the term is. But they are coming in, they are fulfilling orders in the store. A lot of them are actually fulfilling orders that would have gone online. So instead of people ordering from the websites, especially if they have a contact with the store, or if a store manager has a relationship with a client, they're actually fulfilling these orders directly from store merchandise, which is a good thing, considering that's the store gets the credit and not the website getting the credit. You're seeing a lot of stores talking about setting up, when things start to reopen, a more appointment-based schedule to actually give people the opportunity to do by sort of more private shopping in the store, because they're fearful that people are not going to want to be with a larger group. So we're going to try to make an appointment, which obviously is not the greatest thing. Stores rather have a lot more people walking in, but the Madison Avenue stores, at least, they're talking about sort of an appointment schedule. There's a lot of talk about delivery, and to really build delivery sort of standards for the neighborhood. If someone calls and wants to order, they get something within 2 hours if they live in the neighborhood, same day service if they live locally. This is also the store gets the credit and not the website getting the credit, especially when you have, omni-channel retail, if, people buy in both places. So that's becoming quite, important. People are talking about how They are going to deal with people who are returning merchandise and how that's going to be handled. Some people are talking about, or people trying on, you can only try on a certain number of pieces, that once someone tries it on, it's going to be set aside for a period of time so that, you won't have one person trying it on, then another person trying it on. Especially for jewelry, there's going to be a cleaning process with jewelry. In terms of cosmetic stores, they're getting rid of all the textures that you could actually spritz on somebody. You actually have to have the store manager put it on a special form of paper, and then they give it to you. So there's a whole set of protocols that are sort of being set for retail. And a lot of people are sort of following what's happened in Germany, which actually opened up their stores a couple of weeks ago, actually a week and a half ago, and they've opened up smaller stores first and how they sort of handled it. But I think that everyone's feeling, especially the clothing and jewelry retailers, is that people are just going to be very reticent about going back to stores, and they have to do as much as they can remote. So we've been doing classes with Apple for Business to teach people how to do like video chats where they could deal with the store manager that could show them the collection while someone's sitting at home, so that you have that opportunity. People don't have to go to the store, but at the same time deal with a human being and not be dealing with a website. So that's just some of the things that are happening on the street. So thanks.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Just finishing up a note here.
Matt, if I may ask a question of you.
Yes, sir.
If that's all right with Mick.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Okay. Matt, I know your Madison Avenue is a global location. Tourism drives Madison Avenue in a real way. And I know you're really plugged in on what New York City tourism is going to look like. So is there anything you can tell us as far as tourism might be concerned for the retailers in our neighborhood and for our city?
Yeah. So the week before this all happened, we all were working with NYC & Company, which is our Convention and Visitors Bureau, on a WeChat app so that we could be better at serving visitors coming from China. Well, that was not great timing. And right now we have 5 hotels within our district. 4 of them are completely shut down. Only one of them is open. Places that we benefit in terms of the museums and the culturals. You all know what's happening there. The Met Breuer, which is on Madison Avenue, was supposed to have its last show right now, and that's going to be shutting down. And so I think there's a very big concern about growth of any tourism market. And I know my understanding of NYC is they're looking at the sort of the day tripper to the overnight tripper to first. So they really are setting sort of that sense of it's going to take a long, and we're going to go after the low hanging fruit, which is the local day trippers coming back into the city. And actually the definition for a tourist or a visitor is anyone who travels more than 50 miles to the destination. So if someone's coming from, northern Westchester or Putnam, those parts that are further out east, they're a tourist coming into the city. And unfortunately, that I think is going to be the first set of what people are going to be looking for.
That's very, very interesting. Just on that point about tourism, my own speciality is in the theatre world, and I gave a talk with the Irish Consul a few days ago. Broadway annually is worth 12 billion to the city in direct economic output. That's just Broadway, not the smaller off-Broadway theatres. But Broadway alone contributes about 1 billion in city and state taxes a year, and Broadway is so inextricably linked with tourism, in a way that the rest of an awful lot of our other cultural institutions don't rely on it as much. But still, it's going to be a huge. Tourism is going to be huge in terms of how we do open up as well, and how we do get back to a new normal. So I really appreciate you bringing up that point and asking, will Will asking Matt about tourism. That's really important to understand. Okay.
And
So,
one thing I should bring up, and I'll do my plug, is that NYC and Company, which is the city's Convention and Visitors Bureau, is now has a program where they are promoting for free all independent retailers and all restaurants in the city that are doing takeout and delivery. You normally have to pay a fee to get on that site, especially because they're the people who do Restaurant Week, and they are doing something called Shop NYC. And if you are an independent store, and I know they're not taking chains and not taking international locations, but if you're an independent store, they promote you on their site, which is largely a visitor site, as being open and available for business. And it's free, nycgo.com.
NYC and Co.
No, go. NYCgo, G-O.
Yeah.
Here, I'll write it into the thing. nycgo.com. And you'll go .com, and it's Shop NYC and Dine NYC. And you could get, you'll see the links to those two programs, and you can get listed. And it's actually a very robust site. And the city is promoting it. NYC and Company is promoting it to visitor markets abroad, showing that New York City is still open for business. So if you're an independent retailer, independent restaurant, you can get listed there for free.
That's great to know.
Company members.
Great. Thanks so much, man. And maybe we can add that to our website for people who are coming and taking a look to see the updates every day to the Community Board website.
Which are great, by the way, every day.
That's lots, Will. It's a lot of great work from Will and Alida. Thanks so much, Matt. So I suppose let's go to the board. People from the board who are on tonight, and Will, you're the master of ceremonies with the technology stuff. So I would imagine Cos, and we'd like to have a chat with Cos first because he had his hand up first.
All right. Well, Billy, forgive the process, and Cos, you get to go first.
Okay. As far as the PPL, if it wasn't so serious, it would be a joke. The first round went to people, multi-billion-dollar companies that got the money, and the small businesses got zilch. I've got a place out in Queens. I applied with Chase. 3 times they asked to resubmit the paperwork. No communication, nothing. Then somebody put me onto another smaller company, Lend.io. You fill out half the paperwork and they communicate with you, they help you through, and it was very, very easy. As far as the EIDL, you get a maximum of 10,000 grant. However, the 10 comes off any PPL you get. The EIDL also has a second batch, which is a loan over 30 years, which is, I'm not sure what the percentage is. Somebody mentioned anywhere from 3 to 4%, but over 30 years, that's not bad. As far as the PPL, you've got to spend 75% of your grant on payroll. If you're still closed with a bar, how are you going to spend any amount on payroll? You had 10 employees to start with. Now you've got 3, and you have to spend it over 2 months by the end of June. So that will never work. That has to change. The other 25, it's rent and whatever it is. But this whole thing, it's as far as bars and restaurants, they're not going to be fully back operational for the next 5 years. You know, you can wait for the, hope for the best, but 5 years, they're going to be at 40, 50% capacity. The next big thing that restaurants and bars, or no, I don't know about bars, but restaurants should look into is delivery and pickup. That is going to be the thing that, will basically rescue you. That's all. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Cos. I hope you guys are all safe and healthy, man.
Yeah, we are.
We appreciate it. Yeah, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm caught between writing and trying to engage at the same time. So can we have a chat with Will, if you don't mind? I think Billy was next. We had some
I'm gonna mute Billy.
Thanks, Jimmy and Samantha and John. Really appreciate your sort of perspective. And John, condolences on the loss of your chef. Really sorry about that. I'm glad you're doing better. My question goes back to something that Jimmy was talking about all the PPP loan restrictions, and Kaz was sort of just addressing it. But in the Times a day or two ago, there was an article on how businesses are getting conflicting advice, particularly around, do you need to spend the funds in the 8 weeks from which you receive it? A lot of people are worried that, and again, to Kaz's point, you've got a restaurant that's closed, or you've got a business where there's not a lot of customers right now, and your expectation is to spend that entire loan in order for it to be a grant within 8 weeks. And it sort of just doesn't make sense. Now, some banks and some lawyers, I understand, are saying, well, maybe there's a different interpretation. Maybe we wait for SBA guidance to treat this as funds that can be spent anytime once you reopen your business. So it doesn't have to be within those first 8 weeks. So I'm curious for, particularly for Jimmy and for John, who have received the loan and you want it to be a grant, what advice are you getting? Are you thinking at all that you may be able to hold on to some of these funds and spend them later when things are a little bit busier? Or are you anticipating that you're going to spend the entire loan over the course of the next 8 weeks? Obviously, this being sort of a public event, happy to take this offline at some point, but I'm sort of interested in what you're hearing and how you're trying to make the best of this.
So we can, by all means, we can ask that question of John, of all the business owners. Have you guys had any advice from anybody on how best to spend these PPP loans? That's the gist of the question, Billy?
Yeah, but in particular, whether they're actually going to be constrained to spend it over the course of the next 8 weeks. It's my understanding that there's some debate about that, and just total lack of guidance from SBA and Treasury.
Again, lack of clarity and lack of guidance from the people who need to be giving it to people. Yeah. Any of our business owners, if you'd like to raise your hands virtually so you can answer this or speak to it, that would be great.
John has raised his hand. Would you like me to unmute John?
Great. Yeah, please. Thanks, man.
And then Kaz has also raised his hand too, by the way.
Great.
So just very quickly. So every business has different payroll necessities. We currently, even with or without the PPP, because my main responsibility is to take care of my people. All businesses are people-based, whether they realize it or not. I spend right now $20,000 a week on my labor. I'm making about $30,000 a week in overall revenue. Under normal conditions, I spend about $35,000 to $37,000 a week in payroll, with a lot larger revenue stream. So the PPP for me is going to get eaten up pretty quickly, because I'm already, we closed for just under 2 weeks, as I mentioned before. So we've been paying out for quite a while now. What I would recommend for other people in the most honest way possible, you should look at all of your labor expenses, not just what you pay for the staff, and start to understand that this is a big part of the expense. And here's where I'm going with this. Oftentimes when we talk about our labor, a lot of business owners, people who've been in the game for a long time, don't look at their payroll taxes. They don't look at that as part of their week-to-week payroll, and it can be as high as $5,000, $10,000 in employer liability. If the business is completely not open, but you have a porter or you have anything like this, maybe it's an opportunity to kind of increase his range a little bit and increase his responsibility level. If Ryan's daughter, just as an example, decided that they wanted to scrub the place down and start doing minor renovations in hopes of opening up soon, that labor revenue or that labor contribution could certainly be used in that way. Long and the short of it is, in an honest way, be creative, use it for the benefit of the community, for your customers, for your staff. If you have someone who's on, who's pregnant and they're on maternity leave, maybe now's a good time to pay them a little bit. I pay my dishwasher, who he used to wash pots and pans, to shuttle my staff back and forth. I pay him $750 a week to do so, with or without PPE. Why? Because it's my responsibility. A lot of people ask me, why haven't I put up a GoFundMe page for my staff? And it just hit me sideways. Why would I want someone else to pay my labor expense? The government is a different story because it's their responsibility to make sure I can take care of those people. And so, again, it's a matter of looking at the world through a different lens, making sure we can take care of the people closest to us, specifically our employees who are charged with taking care of our community.
Thanks very much, Sean. So Will, I think you said Kaz had his hand up?
Yes, Kaz and Trisha both have their hands up.
Great.
Kaz?
Yeah, with the PPP, talking to different people, they'll tell you differently, but 75% must be spent on payroll-related expenses. And 1099s and construction and any other work does not count towards payroll. So, you're in a catch-22. So, you use somebody on a 1099, that's not part of your payroll. So that's being excluded. Your rent and utilities is the other 25%, but it's the payroll and the catch. And it's also, your interest is at 1%, delayed for 6 months. So in 6 months' time, you're paying 1%, and the term is 2 years. So you're paying that loan, or whatever the interest, whatever the remainder is, it's over 18 months and you're paying off that loan. It's ridiculous.
Thanks for that, Kaz. I appreciate it. It's not helpful.
Yeah, definitely not.
Will, you said there was somebody else had their hand raised on this question?
Yeah, Trisha has her hand up, and so did Jim from Ryan's daughter, if you would like.
I'd like to go to Jim first, just as the business person, and then by all means, then we'll get to Trisha. That'll be great. Thank you.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, sorry, the last thing, just to, Kaz, you said it. I mean, the PPP loans, they were pushed out there as quickly as possible. I think they were a knee-jerk reaction by the government that we have to do something. And they used this device, the PPP loans, which were established already, and they put it through. You said it yourself. It's going to have to change because the 8 week, and the question that Billy asked is, am I going to use it within the 8 weeks? I have received the advice. I have sat on webinars on this damn for a while. And to all the conflicting information, the information is there. It is in black and white. And they do say that you're going to have to spend that money. Whether those rules will change is what is now being some Congress people are voicing, whether they change or not. If they don't change, then it, of course, for John, who's up and running, I think it's made for businesses like that, and it may have a small impact helping him out, and it's good. And I understand his sentiments, but yeah, it is not. It's just a bit of money. It's not going to go that far, but it'll all be in how you account for it. In the end, it's going to be an accounting measure. You're going to have to show how you spend it and when you spent it. So get creative, John.
Thanks very much, man. And Billy very kindly shared that article from the New York Times for people to have a look at if you haven't seen it yet. So that's makes for a little bit of light reading before you go to bed tonight. So I think we said Trisha had her hand raised. So I would.
Trisha, you're unmuted.
Great, thanks.
Hi, Trisha.
Hi, Mick, and thank you all so much to our small business owners who are spending some time with us tonight. I'm wondering, I would love to see this committee meeting and future committee meetings working towards something that can help you guys. And I'm trying to figure out what role the community board can play that can be most helpful. if it's like more information sharing and be acting as a convener role so that we connect small businesses like Samantha's with other businesses that are in that kind of interactive space that are trying to figure out where to go from here, or smaller restaurants or bars, and just information that you guys all know who's gotten PPP, who's applied for that, who's applied for other things. Are there other, I'm also curious if what other expenses you're looking at, if there are other, like say permitting expenses or other expenses that you are looking at that maybe we should be advocating for extensions on, or pushing for other things like that, so that we lower on the other end of things, we lower your costs that you're looking at. Obviously rent is the biggest one, but if there are other things that you're looking at that maybe that we should be taking on an advocacy role, or if there's something else that I'm not thinking of where the community board can help connect and be more and kind of be your advocate in a different way. I would love to hear from the small businesses and let us know what, or perhaps maybe we should be bringing in somebody from SBA to do another webinar just to answer your questions on the Upper East Side of folks who have questions about the specifics of these programs. So I would love to know what you need most from us.
Thanks very much for that, Patricia. And I apologize that I had to run there. My phone looks like it's about to die, so I just wanted to plug it in. So to answer Tricia's question, does any of our business owners, any of you have anything that you'd like to respond to Tricia with? What do small business?
So right now, Mick, you have Alita has her hand raised, and then after you said that, John and Samantha both raised their hands.
Okay, let's give it to John and Samantha, and then we can go to Alita. Thank you.
Okay.
John, so I'll just make it quick. The one thing that I'd really like to see made available, and it seems like it would be a no-brainer, loss of business insurance. I pay it all year long every year. How come I can't file a claim? They won't let me file a claim for that. If you wanted to, let's pretend that I'm the federal government or local government and I wanted to inject money into business as quickly and as appropriately as possible. I would utilize the apparatus that already exists. In this case, loss of business through my insurance. I've paid into it already. I don't understand why I can't tap it. I mean, if this is not a justifiable loss of business that I can attach a claim to, I don't know what is. Rent is rent. There's a real, because I'm the building, oftentimes people think I have no rent to pay, but I have a $35,000 mortgage I have to pay every month. And so there's a trickle down when it comes to rent. However, there are other expenses that all businesses have to kind of work through. Sales tax for those of us who are open, extensions on that would be a godsend, because that's oftentimes, a lot of money for it. Any of our policies, especially healthcare policies, these are things that should be either put on hold or, kind of amortized down over the course of a year or so. But just very quickly, not to take up too much time, the insurance companies should be providing loss of business for all business owners who are struggling to either reopen or who are open and trying to get to the next stage of this thing.
I just, as long as I have you on right here, there's a message popped up from Michelle right there. I think you might see on the screen.
Sure.
Just relating to, just see. Yeah.
The question she had was, does your insurance have a natural disaster exclusion?
I would have to double check it. As you can imagine, most of the riders and policies are pretty dense. I usually rely on my broker to kind of weed through a lot of that for me. But basically, whatever policy I do have, and as a restaurant, we have multiple policies, including terrorism insurance. I mean, we have to carry that now. I mean, that's the strange part. And so, maybe it's my policy. Correct me if that's the case. But from what I understand, we're not allowed to claim loss of business.
Yeah, that's becoming a massive question for a lot of people. Samantha had her hand raised with that question in mind.
Samantha, you're unmuted, and Jim also raised his hand to respond to that too.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off of the business insurance thing. I think that that's an area that there obviously there's been some speculation or some people wanting to change that. Our insurance company sent us a proactive letter basically saying, like, if you're thinking about calling us, don't, because no dice, you're not covered. I will say that I can't remember what webinar I was on, but I was on something where there was a lawyer on who recommended that you at least somehow put in writing with your broker, who then I guess sends it on to the actual insurance underwriter, saying like, whatever the language is of like, you know, I object, or, you know, we've been closed and we think that this should qualify as business interruption. We know that virus isn't included, but can we go on record as saying like, hey, we've been shut down, we're having a business interruption right now? Because theoretically, if it were to ever change, that would help you, put you at the top of the pile, whatever. I mean, again, I think it's a little bit of a Hail Mary at this point, but why not? So that might be worth a phone call. And then just as far as kind of how you guys can help, I mean, I think I've done one of these before and I've done a couple of other group ones. For me, it's just helpful to know what other businesses are thinking, or maybe I take away one or two pieces of advice, and maybe that I know I'm not going totally insane all by myself. So I think any kind of information sharing, especially as we get closer, if we get closer to reopening, you know, I don't want to do what everyone else does, but I certainly would like to be informed, because I think especially with the parent clientele, like it's always like, well, so-and-so is open, or they opened this, or they're boarded up and they're doing this. So even if I don't want to do exactly what everyone else is doing, I certainly would like to be educated about it so that I know that we're not so far out of line. And then, you know, I think just general kind of information sharing is super helpful. So the stuff about the PPP is obviously an ongoing topic. And then I think also as it gets to reopening, like, is there a reputable cleaner who knows how to do this and come in and clean your business before you reopen? And will they give you a discount because you're on the Upper East Side, or you're a women-owned business, or they're a locally owned business, and so therefore we're kind of giving each other business? Because I certainly would rather travel in that circle and be helping other small businesses if I can. If I have to spend the money anyway, I would certainly rather spend it with someone local, when it comes to stuff like that, or the advertising packages, or anywhere that's offering free publicity. I mean, I can't be open right now, so it doesn't help me yet, but I think sharing, hey, here's a website that's letting you add your activities on there for free for a month to try and drive traffic. So anything that the kind of neighborhood, with a neighborhood angle on the kind of bigger news, I think is super, super helpful and much more valuable than just reading about far off places all day.
Can I just respond to that? I think that makes a lot of sense, Mick, and I have been wondering about this. If I was wondering if we could possibly do this, and maybe Will, this is something that we need to talk in, but it seems to be like fairly simplistic to me to have like a living way of communication to between our small businesses, even if it was like a private Facebook group or something more sophisticated through a different way. But like that way people can post things about whether or not they have they got a PPP, or they got another grant, or whether or not they heard about a webinar that was very helpful. Or, I mean, I was talking to Courtney about this months ago, like even when things like before COVID happened, things like somebody had a break-in, and there's a string of break-ins along 2nd Avenue between these blocks. Like that way people can share this information amongst business owners and just and keep it very, very local. I really am talking about a Community Board 8. It means, like, I mean, I think that at a basically like just a bare minimum, this might just help us all communicate and help our businesses just communicate and just share information about what's going on.
Definitely.
That's the Facebook group thing is something that has been brought up in the past as a way to help people kind of share information. So maybe that's something that maybe that's something that I've thought about it myself. And the one thing is that it takes maintenance, and that's if we have a few people, I suppose, as opposed to one person taking responsibility for it, then maybe that's something that could actually work.
I don't know if we need
Go off the rails pretty quickly on Facebook if they're not monitored accordingly. But I will say I'm in a larger one that's national, that is hosted by Facebook itself. And I've gotten a lot, and I'm not a huge social media person, though I have to be a little bit more now. But I've gotten a lot of really good information. Some of it obviously doesn't apply because it's national, but like, I do think that there's a way that works and is helpful.
I don't know if we need like a board approval for something like that, or if it comes from a leader, if it comes from, I don't know how that works, but I would be, more than happy to help set something like that up. I think that it's just makes sense and could help direct this committee a little bit as things rise up, and then could be fleshed out more as, and as input is put in. And something that's a living document versus a living platform instead of like a meeting might be helpful in gathering more business owners together who, for whatever reason, because their businesses, are doing what they need to do at a certain time, couldn't necessarily come to meetings.
It's a great idea, and I know Billy just actually mentioned there. He just sent up a message that he'd be happy to help. I'm happy to help. Maybe if a couple of us, if anybody who wants to have a chat, about this, we can always get on a phone call maybe tomorrow at some point and just have an old chat and see what it looks like. So anybody who wants to, brilliant, Alita is there as well. Anyone who's on the meeting tonight who wants to maybe get on a call, or maybe I'll start an email going around, maybe kind of come up with an idea what that looks like, that'd be great. Kaz also wants to point out there's a great app, I have it myself. It's a bit more of a general app, but it's called the Citizen app. The Citizen app is a great way to give you info about things that happen in the neighborhood. It's quite general, but there's information on there from people that share also. Great. So moving as Tricia. So
Nick, what I would say.
Just wondered if Tricia has anything else to add.
No, that's it. So I think Jimmy was going to add. I would love to hear what Jimmy has to say about things that we can do to help. But I want to hear more suggestions, because I'm 100% committed to helping promote this however we can. But I think at a bare minimum, the idea of information sharing and trying to be oh my gosh, I'm losing my words here, but trying to be the convener of our different local businesses is something that I think the community board can and should be a leader in. So would love to help with that.
Brilliant.
So I'm just putting in the chat our email address. So if anybody is watching or participating, they can email there, and I'll let Mick know everybody who signs up, who wants to be a part of that sort of steering. I would say that the biggest thing also would be creating don't jump into the platform, create a set of rules, create a document that guides, a guidance document of what that platform is going to look like and how it's going to be administered, how it's going to be handled, and so that there's no way somebody says something wasn't fair in the way that it's being administered. So I would say start with that, but I'm going to put the email address in there, but if you're ready for me to unmute Jimmy, I'll unmute Jimmy.
Yeah, that'd be great. Jim, what have you got to say about suggestions on how the board can?
Yeah, well, I have anyone who can advocate against these insurance companies, please. That really is true. I can't believe I missed it in the beginning on the advocacy stuff. Obviously, John said in the beginning, we're all in it together. The landlords are going to be affected. And when we say landlords, that's one thing. Labor, that's a huge cost as well. But we can advocate for these guys, the insurance companies. Their business, we all know, is to not pay on claims. Put the claim in. The best advice that I heard is put it in anyway. And it's what Samantha said. I think we might have been watching the same thing. And if your broker won't put the claim in, see, if you put the claim in, it goes through official channels and then it's denied. Let them deny it. And then if we get any retribution, it'll come down the line. But make sure you don't miss that opportunity. Also, talk to your insurance broker about reassessing your premiums. They are built upon last year's income.
Yeah.
You don't need coverage for this much income in 2020. So before you tear those checks for that rate, see what you can do to apply your pressure on the insurance companies. For advocates, I would love if there were people out there who knew how to do this, because we don't know how to put pressure on insurance companies. That sounds crazy. How do you pressure insurance companies to do the right thing with their money? We have paid into it. We should be getting this. Otherwise, why do you pay into it? Anyway, don't let me get off on insurance. Community board can help in their relationship with the 19th precinct. The smoking law is a good law. No one can stand beside smoking. But when I was a bartender and that law came in, I fought it because I wanted smokers to be inside the bar where they choose to go rather than outside the bar where everyone has to go. And it has been a horrible, horrible thing for us on 85th Street. It used to be no big deal at all, you know, but now people have to go outside and smoke, and it adds to the noise, and it aggravates neighbors. So when you say, okay, go back, but you can only do 25%, I hope the precinct knows and you guys are like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Why are all these lines outside of all these places? You know, I'm looking for guidelines, like how to reopen. Okay, Samantha, you touched on one, the cost of sanitizing your place. Discounts, we're going to be looking to ourselves, the businesses, to discount that sanitation. So is the street still our responsibility? My line, I got to get 6 people. I got to separate them. If there's a fight in the line, that's my responsibility too. Some woman trying to walk her dog and another woman standing in line. You guys been to New York. Is that the business owner's responsibility? We're just trying to do business and we're doing it by the regulations, and it's causing havoc on 85th Street, right? You see with the picture I'm painting. So how does a community deal with that issue? So again, to me, if you're going to advocate, if you're going to think about small businesses and let's think about what we really need. And this is a health crisis. So we need help making things clean and safe. If we're going to tell our customers it's clean and safe, on whose reputation does that lie? And how do you keep your own customers from making the bad decisions? Have you guys been to supermarkets? Like you ask someone, please, you know, yeah. People are tough. Anyway, that'll be it for me. Thanks for hanging in there, guys.
It is tough. You're dead right, Jim. You're dead right. One quick thing that was pointed out to me as regards insurance, this disease, as we've all been told about hand washing and not touching our faces, which I've probably done about 20 times in the last half hour. This disease lives on things. It lives on surfaces. So in terms of insurance, you know, if you want to go that route and write a letter to your insurance company, say, look, this disease is on my surfaces. It has infected my place of business. The same way if there was water damage or a fire, I mean, this is on your property. So, I mean, if you are going to go down that route and chase your insurance companies, I think, you know, tell them. Thanks very much, Jim. I'm going to go back to Will. And do we have any? And I know Alita had her hand up.
Yeah, Alita's had her hand up for a while. I'll go ahead and unmute her. Great, and then Michelle and Billy have both raised their hand during that time.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm going to wear 2 hats. One is me personally. On the insurance issue, we've put in a lot of information in the updates about legal points of view about insurance and the business interruption and the force majeure. There's a lot of discussion in law firms with lawyers among legislative bodies about how to deal with insurance companies. After Superstorm Sandy, a number of courts, the American Arbitration Association, had very low cost programs to mediate disputes between insurance companies and the insureds. And I know because I was a mediator in a lot of those disputes that they were very, very effective. Here already, there are a lot of mediation organizations that are also going to be offering much lower cost opportunities to mediate disputes. I don't know if it's geared towards insurance companies, but that's a way, and there may be class action suits. There are already a number of big lawsuits that have been brought against insurance companies. There is legislation winding its way through Albany to have insurance companies cover this crisis, because as a number of you pointed out, there are premiums that have been paid for years for just something like this. And insurance companies, in my opinion, really should be paying and working things out with their insureds. So that's on the insurance end. You should just keep pursuing it because something should happen. That's my personal hat. In terms of the board hat, I've been advocating for work with commercial landlords, or at least the larger landlords, to change rent, to waive rent, not just to defer it, because my conversations with small businesses have been that deferrals are going to be really meaningless, to come back and then be socked with a huge rent bill. So hopefully landlords will see fit, either informally or formally, to change the way they are getting the amount of money that they're getting, or how often they're getting it for rent. I know there's a whole host of issues. I've talked to Mick about it with respect to smaller landlords, and they have costs too, but certainly there are an awful lot of large, very large commercial landlords in our district. Another community board thing is that Community Board 8 and the Carnegie Hill Neighbors, along with the BIDS and other community organizations, are going to be putting on 2 programs, one to help retailers and small businesses reopen in terms of guidance, suggestions, best practices, what businesses are doing, what they've done in other parts of the world or other parts of the country, since New York may be late in terms of opening compared to other areas. And if you have ideas about, for the small businesses, if you have ideas about what this should look like, please let us know. We're talking about doing something in 2 or 3 weeks so that you're ahead of the curve before things actually start to open. We'll do one for retailers, salons, tailors, things like that, storefronts, and then another one on restaurants and bars, because as Jimmy pointed out, those issues are so different from the small business storefronts. So we're hoping that those will help people gear up for reopening as the city and the state move towards it, and help you address, or at least pick out what the issues are that you should be thinking about in terms of reopening. There are a lot of concerns, a lot of different issues that you've all raised, and I'd be very happy to hear them so that we can take questions, concerns in advance of that kind of program, and really be prepared to help you as much as possible. I think the Facebook group is a great idea. Want to avoid any liability for Community Board 8, of course, but want to make a transmission of information, of concerns, of best practices, of suggestions, of advisors that people recommend, anything to help small businesses through this crisis. Community Board 8 has always been a significant supporter, I hope, of small businesses, and would like to continue to do so, especially now when everyone really needs a lot of help. So we're here to support you. I do want to thank all of the small businesses and all of the elected officials who've been on these calls for help, for expressing your views and being willing to help each other. So we'll figure out a way to start a Facebook group or do something like that, because I think that's a great idea for small businesses to transmit information and concerns and suggestions. And we'll work with their recovery way of moving forward too, for at least those 2 programs in the not too far future. Thanks so much, Mick, for I know how hard you're working on this.
I have a quick question. Thank you, Alita. I appreciate it. I have a quick question for you there, just concerning the programs you're talking about with CB8, Carnegie Hill Neighbors, and the various bids. You said you want to get these, or they're hopeful about having these up and running in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be, obviously it's going to be like a webinar based thing, or like
some kind of virtual thing. That's why we want to get it organized in advance. Maybe
Great.
Have experts maybe do more than one of these if necessary, so that we have the information that could be provided to small businesses. Because while there's a lot in common, a salon might have a lot in common with a tailor or a clothing store. There's obviously going to be differences, and we want to make sure that we address everyone's concerns and try and figure it out. So it's a work in progress, clearly, as all of this is for everybody. But yeah, it'll be a Zoom meeting.
And people will be able to find out about this when it is finalized. From the
Yes, we
community
will.
board
As soon as, yeah, we want, on the one hand, we want to get information out there and provide a resource as soon as possible, because people are going to start to think about reopening as it kind of ripples down from upstate through the northern or other suburbs to New York City. We want people to be prepared, but we don't want to wait too long, so that they have all the information they need in case there's an open gate and people are allowed to reopen. We want to just be there and provide all of the information, which will require notice to people, of course. So as soon as some kind of date is finalized, we'll be sending that out, both again for storefronts, retail, and then again for restaurants and bars.
That's great.
And if you have any other ideas, I'm more than eager to be able to provide the support, because I know how hard it is. I've heard, I don't own a small business, but I know how hard it is to run a small business in New York City before all of this happened. And now it's only gotten that much more difficult. So whatever we can do, we're absolutely happy to do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alita. And I'll go back to Will. And Will, I think you said Michelle had her hand up.
Correct. Michelle, I'm going to unmute you. Michelle, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, thank you. No, I just wanted to give you a couple of comments. I'll just start, since you were talking about the outreach for small business. One thing that maybe would be a good idea, since you mentioned the possible liability of having such a group on Facebook, would be to have a group network on our community board website, but advertised or promoted on our Facebook page. In other words, being directed to our website, and have an actual business group on our website where all postings go directly to that group on our website, but is promoted on our Facebook page. So I was thinking about that. The other thing is Mark Tubin was talking about this. And one of the things he was saying is that one of the ways to reopen is to become a delivery business, because we know that during this whole time, it was those that were able to convert to deliveries that could at least sustain themselves. So that lended itself very well to the food industry, to restaurants, to supermarkets, the online delivery sites. However, it could be extended to even little businesses like a shoemaker, who may only have to have 1 or 2 employees in to do repairs, instead of having the public come in to maybe, have one person who could be a delivery person and pick up shoes, fix shoes, deliver shoes. You could do that with any number of businesses. The hardware stores could open and become a delivery business. There are many, like you suggested, Matt, that the clothing stores are already doing that. One of the issues with the online clothing stores, and I personally came across it, with the problem with returns. You can buy fairly easily online, but you can't return as easily as you were able to before all this started. The return sites, the printing, the mailing label, those sites are all down or overcrowded. So if you do buy, you really have to hang on until the store is open, or until these these sites are more up and running. I was thinking particularly of Samantha, and I know you had talked about at the last meeting about online work. And just to say, for example, my granddaughter is having an 11th birthday at the end of the month. And what my daughter is doing is going online and doing an online, on Zoom or whatever, an online trivia game with a site that provides that. And then all the kids would tune in, and then however they would play the game, whatever that resource is, they would do it. And then she is going to have delivered to her cupcakes for all these kids. And then she is going to drive from building to building and drop off the cupcakes, so that there can be like a birthday party, So that's one example. Whether or not that's something you can do with your business on whatever level that could be handled, maybe you could think about that. But my heart goes out to all of you with small businesses. I know how difficult it is. I'm in the art business and things are not exactly flourishing in the art business these days. So I understand and I wish you all very well. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate those suggestions. And I think, yeah, Mark Lubin's right. I mean, a lot of businesses are going to delivery, delivery and pickups. That's just the nature of how we're getting through this at the moment. I'm going to go back to Will for a moment. And I'm just going to ask Will if, I'm just checking myself, do you have any more hands that are raised? I see
Billy
Billy.
is the last. Yeah,
Brilliant.
Billy's the last person.
So it's just so you know, it's 8:20 now. I don't want it. I think we've had a really, really great meeting. So if everyone else has agreed, I'd like to hear what Billy has to say, and then maybe we'll just move on then afterwards. So Billy, how are you?
Thanks, Mick. And I'm sorry, I don't want to stand between everybody and dinner.
No, you're fine, mate.
But, maybe not this meeting, maybe the next meeting, but I mentioned it in the chat. I just wanted to surface it here. The Assembly Bill 10226. I've got it right here. It's only 3 pages. It says business interruption claims will be required to cover COVID. Any claims that were in effect, as of March 7th, I think, or earlier. This may be something we want to study and think about, but it was raised by John and others earlier that this is one way to help businesses by making, supporting their business interruption claims, which, right now, a lot of those claims, my understanding is, are simply going to be rejected because there's been no property damage. So I'm floating that as something for us to think about.
And that's, sorry to jump in, that's Assembly Bill 10226.
10226. I'll link it in the chat.
That'd be great. It'd be good just to even give to our business owners so they know that this is a conversation that's going on at least. Is that it, mate?
Yeah, that's it. That's yep.
Fantastic. I see Alida has her hand raised. So Will, if you'd like to just plug in.
Thank you. I'll be really short. So since there is a bill in Albany and you have the number for all the small businesses who want to contact their elected officials and voice support, it matters. Phone calls matter, not emails when you're contacting elected officials. So they have been really, really responsive during this time. Just let them know that you support the bill. I believe our elected officials do support this bill, but let everyone know from the governor on down if you support it. And that's one way to possibly get more interest from everyone who needs to. So thank you.
And we reiterate that the best way to contact them is by phone. So
I do, as somebody who used to work for an elected official, I want to push back on that a little bit. These are phone calls are being directed to people's houses right now. They're all checking their emails. I promise you, they're getting logged, they're getting tallied. And if they're already in support of it, send them a lovely email that just says, I'm with you, add me to your tally.
That's true. I may have been too old school in that and looking too much at the past. I just want to, that's everything that I've read and heard about from people, but it doesn't matter. I don't want to take up your time. However you want to voice support, you should be able to do that, and they will have the numbers to back them up.
Great.
Especially if they're already in support of it, an email is perfectly fine. If they're not, if you're calling somebody who disagrees with you, phone calls are a great way to tie up their staff time.
Well, great. Well, I learned something tonight anyway, so that's something at least. Okay. Well, I don't think does anybody else has their hand raised?
Assemblywoman C. Wright's office did say that they are in support of that legislation. So I do want that to be verbally added into the record.
That's really great. Well, I would like to thank you all so much for coming here tonight. I know it's strange times, and we were already struggling with businesses closing down all over the city before any of this happened. So, it's great that people are on here to support, to show support, and to come up with these great ideas. I do think an awful lot of how we solve these ideas is going to come from creativity and innovation, and thinking outside the box. So I really appreciate everyone who has something to contribute. And you can all email me if anybody has any other suggestions, or if they know any other business owners who might want to share their thoughts or opinions. By all means, my email is michaelmalamfi@gmail.com. They have that at the office. And I'd like to I wish you all safe health, and good luck in the coming weeks. And we'll talk to you all again soon. Thank you very much. Do I move to adjourn the meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Appreciate it. Have a great night, folks.
Thanks, Vic.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Good luck.